If you could click your fingers and everything would go back to normal, would you do it? If you could magically undo all that has happened over the last few months, would you do it? Well, of course we would. Whenever we find ourselves in challenging situations, we want to find a way out of it. However, we know that we can't go back to normal just like that. Perhaps the reality is that we will never get back to normal. Has the world moved on so much that some things will never be the same again? That's what's meant by this new normal phrase that keeps on being shared. Will this new normal be temporary or will it last? Only time will tell. One thing I do know is that I'm ready to move on. I want this all to be over. If you could click your fingers and everything would go back to normal, would you do it? If you could magically undo all that has happened over the last few months, would you do it? Well, of course we would. Whenever we find ourselves in challenging situations, we want to find a way out of it. However, we know that we can't go back to normal just like that. Perhaps the reality is that we will never get back to normal. Has the world moved on so much that some things will never be the same again? That's what's meant by this new normal phrase that keeps on being shared. Will this new normal be temporary or will it last? Only time will tell. One thing I do know is that I'm ready to move on. I want this all to be over. I'm actually looking forward to this new normal. I'm feeling lockdown fatigue. It's been great to be able to meet up with people outside, but I want more. Technology has been wonderful over the last few months. It's been great to have been able to stay connected through Zoom, but I'm fed up of saying things like, "Can you hear me?" And "I'm going to share my screen now, can everybody see it?" However, in our desire to get back to normal, I think we need to pause and ask ourselves, what do we want to take with us from this experience? We might want to turn our backs on the last few months. We might want it to move from the present to the past. But what are the things from this time that we should take with us into our futures? What have we learned that we should carry forward? What habits or practices have we embraced during this time that we should hold on to? Instead of just defaulting back to how things were before, how can we pause long enough to see how we can be better for it? Have you noticed how good habits often come from bad situations? You get into debt, and so you adjust your spending habits. You cut back on needless spending, and you create a budget. Or perhaps a health scare encourages you to do more exercise and eat better. People tend to drive more carefully after an accident. And we give more time and attention to a relationship when it goes through a tough patch. But what happens when the situation passes? What happens when your financial situation is back in control or your health improves? We tend to go back to the old way of life, forgetting all the good stuff that was making us better. So what are the good things that have come out of this season that you want to take with you into the next? This will only happen by being intentional. As soon as the new normal lands, we will go back to our old self, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Jesus' brother James knows all about this. James wrote one of the letters that we find in the New Testament. Now, the amazing thing about James is he thought his brother was the Messiah. He thought he was God. What would it take for you to believe that your brother or your sister was divine? A miracle? Well, that's exactly the same for James. He didn't always believe that Jesus was who he claimed to be. In fact, there's only evidence that James realized that his brother Jesus was divine was after he saw him executed and alive again. His brother had been publicly executed, and he saw him alive again afterwards. Well, that would do it. Anyway, this is what James has to say about this whole process of being better for it. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may become mature and complete, not lacking anything. You see, James is telling us that it's through these testing times that we become stronger. There's so many cliches about this. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or no pain, no gain. When we look back on some of the challenges we faced in our past, we can see how we're stronger for them in our present. But do we have to wait for it to be over for us to be better? How can we be better for it whilst being in it? How can we ensure we take the good from the bad without going back to the bad when we're in the good? After all, pain without any gain really is a shame. So that's what we're going to explore together for the next 3 weeks. We're going to drop on a character from history that we can read about towards the end of Genesis. That's the first book in the Bible. He's also got his own film and musical. His name is Joseph. What do you know about Joseph? Well, he had a coat of many colours. We know about Joseph's coat because it played a key part in his story. It was a gift that actually made life harder for Joseph. No, it wasn't because it was a big fashion no-no. No, this coat was really expensive. It cost a lot of money to make colourful clothing in the ancient world. One bold colour was extravagant. A whole host of them was over the top. This coat was a gift to Joseph from his dad, Jacob. You see, Joseph was the favourite of Jacob's 12 sons because he was the son of Jacob's favourite wife. And you thought your family had issues. Jacob lavished gifts and attention on Joseph, but not on the other sons. Does that happen in your family? Is there favouritism among your siblings? Now, I know the pain of this firsthand. My sister Karen, who's older than me, always got better gifts than my brother and I. Karen got a brand new bike, whilst I got half a second-hand bike. She got a moped and a car and even a new bedroom built whilst I had to share a tiny room with my smelly brother. But that's all in the past. I'm over it now. It doesn't affect me anymore.